Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is David Novak. I'm going to do sort of a scatterbrained hodgepodge video talking about mainly my Esther Vilar collection, but then I will get into some talk about Orozco. The 25th anniversary re-release of this book seems to have happened in 1998, and Vilar wrote a new introduction for that. Over 25 years have passed since the publication of my book, The Manipulated Man, a pamphlet written in great anger against the women's movement's worldwide monopoly of opinion. The determination with which those women portrayed us as victims of men not only seemed humiliating, but also unrealistic. If someone should want to change the destiny of our sex, a wish I had then as I have today, then that someone should attempt to do so with more honesty. And she goes on from there. That should give you a sense of the text. Now, I referred to her recently because I was reading Women and Economics by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I think Gilman doesn't hold a candle to Vilar, but Gilman is definitely very much worth reading. I felt that where she was performing a diagnosis, she was spot on, and where she was trying to be prescriptive, she kind of fell off into utopianism. It's always good to read what women themselves have to say about the status of women and not solely relying on men, although we can bet that this book relies heavily on Mill's conversations with Harriet, his wife. So, if you are going to read The Manipulated Man by Vilar, the reissue is decent, and the updated introduction is worthwhile. She can talk about sort of the reception that the book had. But the original edition is better. For the re-release, they tampered with the translation, and I did not scour the text exhaustively, but one notable change was in this book, she uses what we today refer to as the N-word. It was used entirely appropriately in this text, in this translation. God knows what it would have been in the German. And by adulterating it or watering it down, they also deprived the book of some of its meaning. So between the two, I would go for the original if you can get it. But there are compensations with the re-release. Now, this ultimately, doubtless because of its popularity, became a trilogy. And the second book, The Polygamous Sex, was released in English, and I unfortunately don't have a dust jacket for that. You can't get better than this, so that's the way that is. And I read this one years ago, and it did not strike me the way the first book did. I didn't care for it all that much. I probably should give the thing a reread. But I did say that it was a trilogy, and unfortunately, part 3, The End of Manipulation, has never made it into English, which is a shame. If you read German, you can get the 3 in one edition. I found this for a song, and I just bought it, knowing that I myself will never be able to read it, but perhaps one day I will find a German speaker who can help me work my way through the text. I've never really looked at it, but interestingly enough, the text has received highlighting from the previous reader. So I am sure that the whole thing is worth looking at, and the 3-in-1 omnibus edition is probably a good bet if you are looking to read Vilar. Now, she's done a lot of work. She's done plays and books, other books of essays, all sadly hard to get in English, mostly untranslated to English, and when they are, they're exorbitantly expensive. So I've not as yet read any of her plays. I do have another book which looked very interesting to me, and I was only able, it was not also translated in English, but it did come out in a Spanish edition, and the title is Prohibido Pensar, or It is Forbidden to Think, or Thinking is Prohibited, something like that, I would suppose. I can't locate the book, otherwise I would show you it. I have it in Spanish, and it is not beyond my capabilities, if I'm willing to invest the blood, sweat, and tears, to open that book and try to read it with a bilingual dictionary at hand. I have not done so as yet, but perhaps one day, when I have made myself into a better reader, I will undertake that. Over the years, I've piled up different books that I just cannot get through, and if I become a better reader, I hope to go through that backlog. The misfortune there is that now that I watch booktubers, I learn about new books every day and am impelled to buy new books. Now, recently in a comment to a video of mine, I think, in which I showed my prized editions of the poetry of Garcia Lorca, Mariana of Mariana Mas Books, in the comments, made a statement saying something to the effect that she had not known that I could read Spanish. Well, I can't. 40 years ago, I might have done. Not these days, no. But I did mention that there was one book, and one book only, that I have read in its entirety in the original Spanish, and that was the autobiography of José Clemente Orozco. I was down and out in Guadalajara, if you will, and got to see his paintings at the Hospicio Cabanas, or Cabañas. It's a former orphanage, and I was overwhelmed, and I wanted to learn everything about the author. At the time, there was no English edition of this available. I couldn't find one, and even when I got back home, I couldn't find one. It turns out that one did exist, and recently I did pick up a copy. So it was translated into English and issued by Dover, who you might expect would do something like that. And I reread it when I got it, and I did not miss much in the original autobiography. I was somewhere recently where there was a statue of Dr. Atl, A-T-L, who was something of a mentor to the painter. I have no idea where that statue was. I say recently, but by that I mean in the last probably 7 years. And so because of thinking about this, I've been thinking about Orozco. And that book was something I picked up all those years ago in Guadalajara. And it's a really marvelous book. It has started to really yellow. Now, the works at the orphanage, I got back there just before COVID hit, and the works at the orphanage do not impress me the way they did when I was a young boy, or a young lad, if you will. But this, from the book, I think gives you a good sense of the feeling that I got from that place in those days. I mean, this is, you know, you need perhaps some horsemen gliding above it or something, but that's Orozco. Now, in those days, the orphanage itself had been largely turned into a museum of Orozco, and it was quiet and unvisited as a library. If it existed as it did then today, it would be constantly inundated with people coming to see the paintings. Alas, all of the Orozco paintings that used to be housed there have all vanished. While I was in Guadalajara this last time, there was an exhibit somewhere that had a couple of his, also had some paintings by Siqueiros and Rivera. But the vast bulk of the Orozco works are gone. There was a small exhibit in a corner of the place by some contemporary artist that was pretty crappy stuff. So the experience I had 40 years ago is not to be reclaimed, alas. I'm so glad that I picked up this book. I don't have a lot of art books. I have a couple of Magritte. I think I have a little Michelangelo and Raphael book that I picked up somewhere, and I have some Leonardo reproductions. God knows if I could find them now. But now, you know, you look at something like this and you think, well, that's pretty cliched. But not really. I mean, his work, I mean, those years ago, they had those. I mean, I got to see those in the flesh, if you will, and I mean, never will again. Now this is a patron, I believe, and you can see that the anatomy is not quite right. But I mean, this stuff is just wonderful. You know, I'm reading Solzhenitsyn recently. Really makes the art of the time come into sharper focus for me. Now, there is one which I used to have. Oh God, there's the head with the arrow. Oh yeah, I mean, look at this. I mean, if this doesn't give you, I mean, Solzhenitsyn would understand exactly what he's talking about right here. And look at that. Look at that. Oh my God. I mean, what an artist. And this is the one that I used to have blown up on my apartment wall. Just love it. So if you are a bit squeamish, you will not want to look at the cabeza flechada, which I will show you in a second. I just saw it, now I don't see it. Okay. It's a head with an arrow going into it. Oh, there it is. This is, avert your eyes for a second. I mean, and they even give you some detail, but you know, who needs to see the detail on that? Oh, just marvelous stuff. I mean, you know, as his career progressed, he was looking to explore his roots, his native roots more. or perhaps I should say indigenous roots. I don't know what his ethnic makeup was, but he was very interested in Mexican cultural history. So I think when I came back from Guadalajara recently, I picked up this book, The Artist in New York. As Garcia Lorca, he spent his time in New York, and you know, I've got some paintings are in here of that, which, as you can imagine, it was an overwhelming experience. Well, I'm not seeing them. They're not. Well, here's. I mean, this is early on, and you can see that that's fairly derivative. It's not a bad work at all. Not a bad work at all. But let's see if the. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So. Let me just try to show you several. I mean, his New York paintings are not my favorites. I think, like, if it comes to something of this nature, I'd rather prefer Charles Sheeler or, who is it, Demuth, something like that. There you go. I mean, I'm going to show you all these because, I mean, I'm saying they're not my favorites, but I'm just looking at these and loving these so much. I mean, look at this stuff. Just look at this. Man, I can't, well, I'll skip a couple and show you this one. I mean, just wonderful stuff. And so this book has been a treasured possession of mine for 40 years, and as I hold it up, alas, the wafture is a bit uncomfortable. And unfortunately, the book itself appears to be falling apart. I mean, look at that. So I'm taking a trip down memory lane. I'll probably show you the whole book before I don't think, I mean, I regret very much that on the return trip to Guadalajara, all of the paintings had been dispersed. There is another wonderful mural in some sort of municipal building there, and if I were to go back, I would make a beeline for that place. It impressed me more than any of the stuff at the Hospicio this last time. Now, just thinking about texts whilst I was looking for these various books, I came across this, and the poem of the Cid is a work that Mariana of Mariana Mas Books has recently read and become enamored with, it seems. And lo and behold, I had a copy of it and didn't even know it. And what's more, it's a bilingual edition. So look at this. So this is certainly something I have to get on with pretty soon. That is my hodgepodge. That is my scatterbrained video. I will leave it at that. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.